June 18, 2020. Wirecard's auditors just discovered something impossible. 1,900 million euros. Gone.
1.9 billion euros. Supposedly sitting safe in two banks in the Philippines. Except those banks say they never held a single euro of it. For years, this company was Germany's proudest tech story. A DAX giant worth $30 billion. Now it's the biggest corporate fraud in German history, and its second in command has vanished without a trace. This is the story of how one company fooled regulators, journalists, and investors for almost 2 decades. And how it all came apart in a single week. Let's go back to where it started. A small Bavarian payments company nobody had heard of. 1999, a small German firm called EBS begins processing payments for websites regular banks refuse to touch. Adult content, online gambling, high-risk merchants nobody else wanted as clients. It was a niche nobody wanted, which made it wildly profitable for whoever would take the risk. By 2002, the company rebrands, Wirecard is born, and a new CEO takes the wheel. Markus Braun, an Austrian software engineer who talked about payments like they were the future of civilization. He wasn't just running a company, he was performing the idea of one. Visionary, precise, untouchable. Under Braun, Wirecard didn't just process payments, it started buying everything in sight. Dozens of small firms in a decade. Each acquisition added complexity and made the books harder to check. Wirecard's official story. It processed billions through partners across Asia, the so-called third-party acquiring business. The problem, almost no one outside the company could verify these partners actually existed. But investors didn't care. The growth numbers kept climbing, quarter after quarter. By 2015, Wirecard's market value had already crossed 5 billion euros. Financial journalists started calling it Germany's answer to PayPal. Braun leaned into the comparison, talking openly about disrupting the entire global payments industry. In 2018, Wirecard did something almost unthinkable for a 20-year-old fintech firm. It replaced Commerzbank, one of Germany's oldest banks, on the DAX, the country's blue-chip index. A 20-year-old startup had just outranked a bank founded in 1870. This was framed as proof Germany could build the next Silicon Valley. Braun became a billionaire on paper, profiled as one of the great minds of European tech. Wirecard's headquarters became a monument to that image. Glass, minimalist, screens showing live transaction data. But a few short sellers and skeptical analysts had already started asking a simple question. Where does the money come from? In 2008, a small group of investors was accused of trying to short Wirecard's stock with fake allegations. Wirecard called it a smear campaign, and the public largely believed them. It set a pattern for the next 12 years. Question Wirecard's numbers, and Wirecard and much of Germany would question you instead. Behind the scenes, one executive was becoming indispensable to how Wirecard actually operated day to day. Jan Marsalek, Chief Operating Officer, the man who made the impossible parts of the business somehow work.
He cultivated a reputation as a fixer with connections everywhere: intelligence circles, foreign officials, high-risk gambling operators in Asia.
Colleagues later said no one, not even the board, fully understood what his Asian operations actually did. That opacity wasn't a bug. For a company built on complexity, it may have been the entire point. By 2015, Wirecard's growth had caught the attention of one particular financial newspaper in London. A reporter there had a simple habit. He read footnotes other people skipped. What he found didn't add up. Subsidiaries with no clear function, revenue that seemed to move in circles. He started publishing a series of investigations. Wirecard called every one of them false. But the more Wirecard denied, the more he kept digging. What came next would end up threatening his career, long before it threatened theirs. Starting in 2019, the Financial Times published a series called House of Wirecard, and it read like a slow-motion demolition. The reporting alleged fabricated profits, forged contracts, and a Singapore office cooking the books to hit growth targets. Wirecard's response was immediate and aggressive: total denial and a promise to sue. Braun dismissed the allegations as a coordinated attack on the company. Investors, for now, mostly agreed with him. In 2016, an anonymous report under the name Zatara had already made almost identical accusations: accounting fraud, money laundering, fictitious clients. The same day it was published, Wirecard's Singapore office received a bomb threat. Trading was briefly suspended.
No one was ever definitively linked to the threat, but the timing raised more questions than it answered.
The stock dropped over 20% that day. Then, within weeks, climbed right back. By early 2019, Singapore's own fraud police had seen enough to act. Investigators raided Wirecard's Asia-Pacific headquarters, seizing documents related to the suspected fraud. Wirecard's stock barely reacted. Germany's home regulator still hadn't opened an investigation of its own. In fact, Germany's financial regulator was about to do something almost unheard of, and it wasn't investigate Wirecard. In February 2019, BaFin banned short selling of Wirecard stock, the first time it had ever done that for a single company. The stated reason? Protecting market stability. The effect? Shielding Wirecard's stock from the very investors betting it would fall. Then BaFin went further. It filed a criminal complaint against the journalists investigating Wirecard for suspected market manipulation. The regulator meant to police Wirecard was, for now, effectively policing the people asking questions about it instead. To much of the German financial establishment, Wirecard wasn't a company under suspicion. It was a national champion under attack. That perception deepened in April 2019, when SoftBank, one of the world's biggest tech investors, put 900 million euros behind Wirecard. To the market, this was ultimate vindication. If the smartest investors in tech believed in Wirecard, the fraud allegations must be nonsense. Wirecard's market value crossed 24 billion euros. Braun was, on paper, worth well over $1 billion himself. It was, by every visible measure, the peak. It also turned out to be the beginning of the end. Because behind the record valuation, one basic fact hadn't changed. Nobody outside a small circle could actually verify where the profits came from.
Year after year, its auditor, Ernst & Young, one of the world's Big Four, signed off on the books without objection.
Critics later asked how auditors reviewing a global operation could fail for years to independently confirm nearly 2 billion euros actually existed. The answer was startlingly simple. For years, no one had ever actually asked to confirm the money was real. By late 2019, mounting pressure from the reporting and rattled investors forced Wirecard's own supervisory board to act. It said, plainly, significant portions of Wirecard's most profitable business could not be verified at all. Documents were missing. Contacts were unreachable. Promised confirmations never arrived. When the findings were finally published in April 2020, the report wasn't a clean bill of health, and it wasn't a smoking gun either. The stock dropped over 25% in a single day. For the first time, even loyal investors began to panic. 2 months later, the company would run out of road entirely, and the man everyone trusted to explain the numbers was about to give the strangest answer of his career. Braun went on the offensive again, insisting the report actually vindicated the company. Almost no one outside Wirecard's own walls believed him this time. June 2020. Wirecard was due to publish its annual results, but the date kept slipping, first by days, then by weeks. The reason it would emerge was simple. Ernst & Young could not get the confirmation it needed from the trustee banks in the Philippines. On June 18th, Wirecard finally admitted it publicly. Auditors could not confirm cash balances of 1.9 billion euros. That's roughly the annual budget of a mid-sized country. Simply unaccounted for. 2 banks in the Philippines named were asked directly, "Did you ever hold this money?" Their answer was unambiguous. Both banks said, on the record, Wirecard had never been a client. The trust documents Wirecard had shown its own auditors for years turned out to be forgeries. Nearly 2 billion euros that investors, banks, and regulators had believed was real for years simply wasn't. Wirecard itself admitted there was a, quote, prevailing likelihood the missing funds simply do not exist.
It was, in plain language, one of the largest corporate admissions of fraud in European history.
The stock, worth over 100 euros a share less than a year earlier, went into freefall. Within days, it had lost more than 90% of its value. Roughly 24 billion euros, gone. 2020, Wirecard filed for insolvency. The only DAX 30 company in German history to ever collapse this way. Roughly 50,000 shareholders, ordinary investors, pension funds, retirees, were left holding shares now worth almost nothing. But the market crash wasn't the strangest part of that week. The strangest part was what happened to the man. One day before the insolvency filing, Wirecard's supervisory board suspended Jan Marsalek and named him a suspect in the missing funds. That same day, Marsalek boarded a private jet out of Austria. He has not been seen in public since. Investigators traced his path to Belarus. From there, multiple reports point toward Russia and a new identity allegedly arranged with help from Russian intelligence contacts. Interpol issued a red notice for his arrest. As of today, Jan Marsalek remains a fugitive. The man who once made Wirecard's most complicated operations somehow work had made himself disappear just as completely. Meanwhile, back in Munich, the man who had built and led the entire company for 18 years wasn't running. Markus Braun was arrested by German authorities days after the collapse on suspicion of false accounting and market manipulation. He was released on bail within days, then re-arrested less than a week later, after prosecutors argued he was a serious flight risk.
He has now been in pre-trial and trial detention for more than 5.5 years.
His trial finally began in December 2022, and as of today, it is still going on, one of the longest criminal trials in modern German history. Braun denies all the charges. His defense argues he too was deceived by Marsalek and others operating behind his back. Prosecutors see it differently, that Braun ran the scheme and Marsalek and others simply executed his orders.
German courts have already signaled they find the fraud allegations against him credible. A verdict, after more than 230 trial days, is still not expected until sometime in 2026 or later.
Whatever the final verdict, the damage is already permanent. Creditor banks alone lost more than 3 billion euros.
Wirecard didn't just cost investors money. It exposed something much harder to fix. And that's where this story really matters. In the months that followed, attention turned to a harder question. How did Germany's own financial watchdog get this so wrong? A parliamentary inquiry was opened. It found a regulator that had, for years, trusted a national champion instead of scrutinizing one. Germany's finance minister at the time admitted the case had exposed serious failures in financial oversight. Senior BaFin officials would eventually step down. Ernst & Young, the firm that had signed off on Wirecard's books for over a decade, faced a wave of lawsuits from investors around the world. The firm has maintained it was itself deceived by a sophisticated, deliberate fraud. Critics argue basic checks like directly confirming bank balances should have caught it years earlier. It didn't take long for commentators to reach for a comparison. Germany's Enron. But some legal experts argue Wirecard is arguably worse. Enron collapsed despite scrutiny, actively suppressed scrutiny instead of applying it. That distinction matters because it points to a weakness that goes well beyond one company. In the years since, Germany has overhauled how BaFin operates, giving the regulator new powers to investigate companies directly, rather than relying so heavily on companies' own auditors. The EU has also pushed for stronger, more independent audit oversight across the entire bloc, reforms directly traced back to this single case. Critics say the reforms are a start, but reactive ones, built only after 20 billion euros had already vanished. It's about how easily complexity itself can be used as camouflage. Subsidiaries, cross-border partners, and technical jargon that make basic questions sound naive to ask. The most effective fraud in modern corporate history, in other words, might not need to hide. It just needs to be complicated enough that... The deeper lesson, though, isn't really about one regulator, or one auditor, or even one company. So where does this stand today, in the summer of 2026? Markus Braun remains in custody in Munich. His trial is still ongoing, with a verdict not expected until 2026 at the very earliest.
Jan Marsalek has never been found. He's believed to still be living. One of Europe's most wanted fugitives. And the 1.9 billion euros that started this whole story? To this day, no one has ever found it.
Some ghosts, it turns out, are made of paperwork. Wirecard wasn't undone by some clever whistleblower catching a hidden trick. It was undone by people simply refusing to stop asking a very basic question. Can you actually show me the money? That question sounds obvious. In practice, inside a system built on trust, prestige, and thousands of pages of paperwork, it took years for anyone to make it stick. If there's one thing worth taking from this story, it's that scale and confidence are not proof. They're just very convincing costumes. Thanks for watching this one all the way through. Stories like this take a long time to research and put together properly. If you want more stories like this one, real events told properly, without the noise, that's exactly what this channel is going to do. Subscribing genuinely helps. It tells the algorithm this kind of long-form, researched storytelling is worth showing to more people. If you're curious what happens when Braun's trial finally reaches a verdict, or when Marsalek, if ever, is found, that update will come right here. Until then, this was the story of Wirecard. How a small idea, complicated on purpose, became a €1.9 billion ghost.